welcome to Michelle RX. I just got home from work. That's why I look a little tired. Sorry. But I got some questions. Let me pull them up. I got some questions. I got an answer. You guys took me at my word. I'm glad. I want to answer these questions. Let me get this done before I start cooking and I finish my evening. I definitely want to answer your questions. My first question is, hi Michelle. Hello. Thank you for all you do for the MS community. You're welcome. I have a quick question. The doctor said MS is immune mediated. I just had a mediator with my divorce and I have no idea what this has to do with my MS. All right, that's actually a good question. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's a great question. Immune mediated means the immune system is responsible for the inflammation that caused your MS flare or your MS attack or your MS exacerbation. That's all that means. Immune mediated means that the immune system was responsible. That's all that means. So I hope that, that's the most concise answer I could give you. So I hope that answers your question. All right, number 2. How do I know when I'm having a relapse as opposed to not feeling well? Well, a relapse, it's interesting because I had the exact same question when I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2001, and that was something that I always wondered, like, how do I know? How can I tell? Because I had this underlying feeling of unwellness. It was an abnormal feeling. I had that all the time. So I was like, how can I distinguish this from a relapse? And recently, well, actually not recently, but since I've been diagnosed, the literature is more clear as to what a relapse looks like. So first, a relapse lasts greater than 24 hours. That's the first thing. The second thing is a relapse has neurological symptoms that are very akin to multiple sclerosis, such as numbness, tingling, blurred vision. If you have optic neuritis, if you develop optic neuritis, you will have double vision, blurred vision. You could even lose your vision. That's how you know you're having a relapse. Your balance is more compromised. Things like that, neurological symptoms like that, are indicative of a relapse. And if it lasts greater than 24 hours, you know that's what's happening. Another way you can know it's a relapse is if you've had an infection recently. Infections can spawn relapses. So if you can document in your mind, okay, I had the flu, or I had COVID, or I had shingles, those infections can, not at the exact time necessarily, but later on can potentiate a relapse. So just take note, if you have an infection and then at some time in the future you begin to feel the neurological symptoms we just mentioned, then that's probably a relapse. Another thing, a relapse can be spawned for no reason at all. You could just be existing with MS and have a relapse. Either way, whatever the circumstance, you need to let your neurologist know. Why? Because you need to keep track of your relapses. We'll talk about why in more detail a little bit later, but you definitely need to keep track of your relapses. And that's a very good question because it's very confusing, especially if you're newly diagnosed. It's really hard to figure out what am I dealing with exactly, but I hope I gave you some parameters that you can kind of keep track of in your mind. Because I had that question a lot when I first was diagnosed. I was like, what is this? What's happening? But that's how you can tell. All right, the next question I have is, let's see. Hi, Michelle. Hello. I have MS and I'm walking around unassisted. Why are other people I see with MS in wheelchairs? Actually, that answer is quite simple. There are millions of people on planet Earth with MS. Everybody has different types of MS. Everybody has lengths of time that they've had MS. Everybody has different lesions placement on their central nervous system, either their brain or their spinal cord. That's different. Everybody's environment is different. Everybody's exercise regimen is different. There are multiple factors that indicate why some patients are in wheelchairs and some patients not. some patients might even choose to be in a wheelchair because walking alone takes so much energy. They might actually choose to be in a wheelchair. Although that's very rare, it's very possible, but that is a very broad stroke as to why you see some people in wheelchairs and some people not. Most of the people in wheelchairs, like 99% of the people in wheelchairs, are there because that is how they ambulate, how they get around. But you can have people that choose to not expend as much energy because it takes so much out of them that they choose to be in a wheelchair. Either way, that's a reason why patients are in wheelchairs. And actually, I'm not in a wheelchair currently, but I was diagnosed in 2001, and because of the amount of lesions I have on my brain stem, and my spinal cord, and because of the time period I was diagnosed 23 years ago, it was pretty clear, or I was told, Michelle, you probably will be in a wheelchair, but I'm not in a wheelchair. So I'm not saying the doctors weren't telling the truth. It's just, it's amazing what prayer can do. It's amazing what mindset can do. It's amazing what eating right can do. It's just amazing. But actually, I'm not in a wheelchair, just to give you a personal note. All right, the next question. This question hits close to home. It says, I've been diagnosed with MS a while, approximately 10 years, but I had been feeling bad for about 2 years prior. Since you're a pharmacist, do you have any idea why it took so long to diagnose me with MS? Oh my goodness, this is a very good question. And actually, I can relate to this question as well, because I didn't feel well for a while until I was diagnosed. And interestingly enough, with diagnostic criteria, the guidelines have changed. Before, physicians, neurologists, had what's called the sit and watch theory, where they would allow patients to have relapses, one after the other, and allow MS to declare itself. I can't say I agree or disagree with that, but that's what the diagnostic criteria was before. As of 2017, there's a new, completely different guideline for how to diagnose MS, and it's after the first relapse. Do you realize how game-changing that is? That after the first relapse, you can, in conjunction with an MRI, other clinical signs and symptoms, and the result of your lumbar puncture, your cerebral spinal fluid, they can look for what's called, they're looking for a specific type of band. I'm going to even give you the name of the band because it's a long name. But they're looking for diagnostic criteria. That can be after the first attack. That's game-changing, because the sooner you treat the disease with what we call disease-modifying therapy, the quicker you can basically stave off relapses. The more you stave off relapses, the longer you can function normally. That is next level. I mean, I hate to say I wish I would have been diagnosed closer to 2024 than I was 2001, but because of the 2017 guideline change, that has changed the reality for a lot of MS patients. So, yeah. And I found that article. I might place it somewhere up here or up here. I don't know where you put it. But it's by the article was written by a physician, and it's a really good article. I'm not sure if you want to read it, but I can put the reference somewhere to if you felt like reading it for yourself. But yes, the diagnostic criteria for MS has changed. All right, next question. Let's see. I was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and they say that I have RRMS. What does that mean? That is a humongous question. There are different types of MS. There is clinically isolated syndrome. There's relapsing remitting MS, which is the RRMS. There's primary progressive, and there's secondary progressive MS. Those are the classes of MS. I will do an entire video on each class so we can talk about it and we can explain each one. But RRMS is relapsing remitting MS. And the most basic explanation is you have a relapse and then you go into remission. And you have another relapse and then you go into remission. And that is over the course of your disease state. You have relapses, remissions, relapse, remissions. That is the simplest way to explain RRMS. It is extremely detailed. But for the sake of time, we're not going to go into all the details. I'm going to do an entire video on relapsing remitting MS. So sit tight and stay tuned because I'm going to put it out eventually. The next question is, let's see. Oh, this is personal, like in my house. Question: how did MS affect your relationship, especially since you discovered it early in your marriage? Was it hard? Yes, it was very hard. It was hard. We had the normal, excited to be married, very much in love, very giddy, very bubbly, but we had a layer on top of that we both had to deal with. We both had to always keep in the back of each one of our mind. What's going on? What's happening? What's happening with my body? I had very obvious symptoms. I had very, very bad heat intolerance, and we live in the South. And I also had problems with my gait, my balance. So those two things were the pillars of our married life when we first got married, was the severe heat intolerance and my gait changes, my mobility. It would come and it would go. It would come and it would go. I have relapsing remitting MS. And even when I was not having a relapse, I would still struggle with the heat intolerance and the gait changes. So to answer the question, when we first got married, did it affect our relationship? It affected not how we communicated, because we communicate. That's actually something we're very good at. We're very good at communicating. But it affected how we planned our trips. It affected how we moved around the city, because if we wanted to go on a weekend getaway, we learned really quickly we couldn't do that in hot climates, because I felt it. I felt it immensely. So that would be a way that it affected our marriage at the very beginning, is figuring out what our boundaries were, what our parameters were, what we could enjoy fully, as opposed to what we shouldn't do at all. And anything that put us in a position where the heat was just way too much, I couldn't take it. I couldn't handle it. So that meant, and we learned the hard way, we couldn't go. We couldn't endure that, because it was a struggle. So yes, it did affect how we moved around in our play life. But as far as our marriage was still strong. Our relationship was still fun, but we just had to learn how to navigate that portion of our marriage. So yes, but the good thing is it happened so early in our marriage. It happened at the very beginning. So it's normal to us. And I can say I'm proud of us, because here we are this year in June. It will be our 24th year anniversary. I think we've done pretty well in navigating how to live with this other human called MS. Well, it's not a human, but this other reality that we have to face, MS. It's really, I think we've done a pretty good job of managing it and accounting for it and staying out of harm's way so that I won't get in trouble physically. So yes, to answer your question, it did affect our marriage, but I don't think it affected it in a bad way because it was so early in our marriage till it was integrated into the fabric of who we are as a married couple. So I hope I answered your question, but yes, it did affect us. All right, the next question. Let's see. Do I feel like I personally was more motivated to work out because of my diagnosis of MS? Remember I said before in other videos that I used to be a runner? I've always worked out. That's not new to me. I worked out. My mom works out, and my mom is incredible. She's worked out my whole life. She's a very fit woman, and I'm my mom's daughter. To me, I don't know how other girls feel, but I would think other girls want to be like their mom. At least I do. I still do. I still want to be like my mom. And she always worked out, and I always worked out. And before, I worked out because I liked it. I just liked the way I felt in my skin. But when I was diagnosed with MS, it's like something went off in me. It's like a switch was flipped. My why changed completely. My why went from, yeah, I like doing this. I'm about my fitness. I want to make sure that I'm healthy. I want to make sure that I'm strong to, I don't know what this is. I don't know what just happened to me. But I had this insatiable hunger to not be a burden. What do I need to do to not be a burden? And so exercise and fitness went from enjoyable to almost like a fight. Almost like, in order for me to maintain my independence, this is what I have to do. This is the direction I have to go. And I have ever since. The good thing is, well, let me put it like this. The bad thing is, I had to really, really dial myself back because it became almost like an obsession. And that wasn't good. But the good thing is, my why was always intact, and it still is intact. My why is I enjoy being independent. I enjoy being a part of the creator of my own narrative. I enjoy that. And in my mind and in my heart, exercise did that for me. It gave me the ability to write my own story. It gave me the ability to decide. And so, yes, my motivation changed. It went from fun to a call. I was driven by it. I love my independence. I want to be independent. I want to not be a burden. I want to be the writer of my own story. So that's why I work out like I do. I've ridden the MS 150 3 times. And each time I did it at different lengths, but the training for it was a beast. But I enjoyed it because my why was intact. Before, when I was working out, I would run and I would do various aerobic activities. I would lift weights. After I was diagnosed, my why was completely different. My why was, I want to write my own narrative. I want to be independent. I don't want to be a burden. And I literally would repeat that mantra to myself as I work out. I would cry as I work out. I would grit my teeth as I work out. I would growl as I work out because I felt so strong that I do not want my story to be written about me. I want to write my own story. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that was my motivation when I was diagnosed with MS. Is I don't know. I don't even know if I'm sorry that I feel this way, but I still feel this way. After all these years, I still feel this way. I want to write my own story. And I want to be my own byline. I don't want to be talked about. I want to write my own story. I want my own independence. So that's my why. So I hope that wasn't too much. But nevertheless, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. And I want to encourage you, please keep asking me questions. I love answering questions. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go to my socials, ask me questions. Go to the comments, ask me questions. Go to the comments and give me video ideas, things that you're curious about. I have ideas of things that I can do videos on, but I want to do things that are helpful to the MS community, or people who are family members of MS community, or friends of MS community. What questions do you have? Let's talk about it. Let's learn about it. I can do videos on it. So that's the whole point of this entire channel, is to be a place to come to feel safe and feel heard and feel not happy, but to feel like, okay, I can understand this. I can see what's going on. I can see, because she's a patient and a practitioner. So yeah, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.